Yeah, that's one of the things we talk about Star Wars lots here. I think we've already started the podcast, so
You know what? We should probably do introductions. So,
yeah, well,
Eric.
Yeah, I can introduce myself. Yeah, my name is Eric Pierce. I'm a big dork who started writing on the internet, and I initially was an author. I started writing fantasy and science fiction type stuff a long time ago. I published some of it on Amazon, and then, like all writers, I was like, well, no one's reading my stuff. How do I find people to read my stuff? And that brought me to Medium in a roundabout way. And I was like, well, I need to find my people. My people are people who like Star Wars and, Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to write about that, and maybe they'll go read my novels. And that didn't work. Nobody went and read the novels, but
I read one of them at least.
Oh, did you? Oh, well, all right. Well, then that's awesome.
I can't remember the name of the one I read.
It probably was Clockwork Scoundrels, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Yep. That was born. Everything I do is informed by pulp culture in some way. That was, I don't know if you guys remember the TV show Firefly back in Okay. I love that show. That was like a steampunk riff on premise of that show, essentially. Yeah, so I came to Medium trying to find an audience for my novels, my fiction. And what I found instead was that I really liked talking about pop culture and writing about it. That was about 4 years ago. I started a pop culture publication on Medium called Fanfare. That's now Medium's largest active pop culture publication. We get somewhere between 200 to 300,000 views every month, which is pretty cool. That's all pro bono. There's no money in that. It's just something I do because I love it. I started the publication because I wanted to find people who like the same stuff I do, and it's worked. And since then, yeah, I'm still on Medium. I started freelancing with places like Den of Geek and Slash Film. I'm pitching to Polygon and other places, and I like talking about the stuff, so I started writing about it, and here we are.
Oh, awesome. That's a great story. I was a big Slash Film follower way back from their inception, so that's pretty impressive. I haven't been on there in quite some time. I've been laying off the movie news lately, but I'll have to check you out on there. So some of your favorite articles that you've written pop culture-wise, maybe you could just kind of throw some of those out there.
Favorite articles? That's kind of tough because I've written several hundred. I guess the ones that come to mind, Star Wars is never far from my mind. And I just wrote an article for Slash Film about Firefly, of all things, actually, which was kind of fun. I guess my favorite articles are, I don't do traditional reviews. I feel like they don't age well, and if I'm going to talk about something, I want to talk about more than just like why you should go watch it. I want to talk about what it means to me, or do a different riff on it or something. So my stuff tends to be a little quirky. I try to inject humor into it. But now you put me on the spot. I'm drawing a total blank on, like, if you should read one of my articles, it's this one. I guess there's a couple on my Substack I would recommend. There's one that this illustrates how my mind works. I just randomly started thinking about Fellowship of the Ring. You know the sequence where the hobbits and Aragorn are chased out of Bree, and they end up at Weathertop, and they're chilling out, and the hobbits, Frodo goes to sleep, he wakes up, and the other hobbits are making breakfast, and they freak out, and the Nazgul are there, and I started wondering, like, well, where the heck was Aragorn while this was going on? Like, he had one job, which was to keep the ring bearer safe, and essentially everything that happened is his fault. So that article was just kind of conjecture on my part of, like, well, where was he? What was he doing? And just kind of like, when you really think through the steps of how we arrived at that situation where Frodo gets stabbed and everything else, like, it was kind of a comedy of errors. So that's on my Substack. I did another one about Star Wars, of all things, but that's kind of those are the kinds of things I like writing, is like looking at something that we all know and love so well, and maybe just tilting it just slightly to the side and asking questions and just having fun with it.
Filling in the spaces in between the pop culture moments. I like that.
Yep.
I'm going to have to go look for that story. I missed that one.
I think that might have been before. It might have been before. So my Substack's only like, I launched it at the beginning of December, and I did it quietly because I wasn't 100% sure I was committed to it. I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for because I'm freelancing and I'm also posting stuff to Medium, and so now I'm doing the Substack. And how do you decide, what's what? So I kind of did it quietly, and then once I was sure, like, hey, I like this. This is fun. Then I sent out a note to people that follow me, and that's how Tim found it and how we reconnected, actually. But I think that particular story I wrote before, like I said, hey, come check out my Substack. But it is out there. I can send you guys a link to it.
Sure, I'd love to read that.
I'm going to look up all your stuff as soon as the show's over. I'm probably going to buy, what was your book title again? Clockwork
Scoundrels.
Clockwork Scoundrels.
Yeah, it's only $1 US on. It's a novella. It's only $1 US on Kindle. I wrote it 7 years ago, and then I wrote the sequel, and then the third book is, the first two are novellas. The second one is twice as long as the first one, and now the third one is like novel length, essentially, because it's just grown. And 6 years later, I'm still writing the dumb thing, and partially because I've gotten distracted by writing about Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, so that's part of the issue.
Well, I don't think it goes too long into any one of our podcasts where we don't talk about Star Wars and some sort of thing. I think Tim and I relate just about everything. We could be, I don't know, talking about puppies and it would come back to Star Wars. So we feel your pain, man. We feel your pain.
Yeah, it's funny when Tim asked if I'd come on, I was like, my first thought was, A, I didn't know you had a podcast, and then B, let me go check it out. And the last episode you guys aired was on the right in the subject line, or the title, it says Star Wars Christmas Special, and I was like, all right, well, let's give this a read or listen. And yeah, it was like, okay, I could easily talk to these guys for an hour. This is good stuff. So
yeah, we wind up down a Star Wars rabbit hole every time. So one of the things that we were kind of talking about pre-show, maybe we could relate this back to Star Wars. How about some of the topics that you cover pop culture-wise? One of the things I notice lots is there's like kind of a nostalgia thing going on right now, and especially it's in Star Wars. When they run out of things to do, they're like, well, it's time to put the nostalgia in here. And we're kind of seeing that in the movies. I don't know if it's a symptom of maybe the COVID stuff, or if maybe it was just kind of in the works the whole time. But now we're seeing kind of stuff coming out, Top Gun Maverick, The Mandalorian with the really nostalgia ending of season 2, stuff like that, and Spider-Man No Way Home has that big nostalgia flair to it.
Oh yeah. The three-way.
As a pop culture writer, would we say critic?
You could say, you call me critic. I am critical. I mean, I love Star Wars, which means then that I'm very critical of Star Wars because I grew up on it and it means a lot to me. Like, I criticize Star Wars when it comes from a place of love because I don't like to see, like you were kind of alluding to just now, I don't like to see it cheapened, and throwing Luke Skywalker in to the end of season 2 just to have Luke Skywalker there, like, it was cool in the moment, but then when I look back, I was like, yeah, I think I would have rather he didn't show up,
It was it was just a cheap out, it felt like. To me.
Absolutely.
Right afterwards. So the same thing. I enjoyed watching it the first time, and then afterwards, like, well, that kind of wraps everything up way too easy, with no consequences to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking about it the other day, and I was telling somebody, without trying to spoil it, I was like, well, season 2 has this kind of moment at the end. When I watched it, I had tears in my eyes. But then after a while, I thought about it, and I just kind of felt cheap.
Yeah, it cheats the story. Absolutely, because it takes all of the agency away from the main characters. So Mando and his friends are holed up in the bridge, and it doesn't look good, and you don't know how they're going to get out of it. And they don't even get to make the chance because Luke comes in like Superman and takes care of it for him. So it robs, and they kind of redeem it a bit with the way Mando says goodbye to Grogu, right? I mean, that brings it home, but at the same time, you're taking something away from the characters that the story is supposed to be about and giving it to this other character, and yeah, I'm not a fan of that moment.
We then later know goes on to drink space cow milk. So it just told,
I think for me, that was why I kind of enjoyed it so much in the moment, was because, we just got out of seeing The Last Jedi, and that was the last picture I had in my mind, was that, our hero, Luke, he's turned into this bitter old man pushing on cow boobies and drinking weird green milk. He doesn't want to do anything. And then he goes out in style with, he has a Zoom call so hard that he dies.
Yes. We have been on such Zoom calls, right, where you wanted to die because it's miserable.
Yeah.
I was on one the other day where I watched someone die right in front of me. It was he lived, but I have a feeling he just drank heavily that night. He almost didn't make it out. He almost Luke Skywalkered out of that Zoom call.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was for me. That was kind of what I felt like. Was I enjoyed that moment so much that I thought, well, this is amazing. This is like the hero that I wanted to see. This is finally like they gave us something to kind of take the sour out of what we saw in The Last Jedi. And then I realized, well, they just left poor baby Grogu. He left the Jedi Academy where Luke's dad murdered everybody. And they just left him at Uncle Kylo's murder hut.
Yeah.
So they immediately had to undo that.
Yep.
They couldn't have any of that. So the Book of Boba Fett, there again, I'm watching the show and not a whole lot's happening. And then, all of a sudden it turns into the wonderful Mandalorian story where they completely undo Uncle Kylo's murder hut. And, now we all feel good because we know he's not going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like modern Star Wars is too preoccupied with trying to connect all the dots and make sure everything is this cohesive meta narrative. And it would be better off if it just let things be their own thing. Like, I would be so much happier if Mando and Grogu never met Luke, never tied into anything we've ever seen before. But I feel like the Book of Boba Fett was just this exercise in trying to just knit all these characters together, Ahsoka and Luke and Grogu and Boba Fett and Mando, and tying together the past and the present, and it just fell flat, and it was a disservice to, in my mind, it ruins The Mandalorian, which I love, that show. It ruins it because, again, it just cheapens that story in the interest of building this MCU type of story where everything is interconnected.
If they were to just move forward with a consistent type of writing style, from, say, I don't know, the past to the future, and then they would have all the things because the way the MCU works is it starts in the past and then goes forward and continues building upon each previous story using a similar style. So you don't see a lot of MCU stuff that's like wildly divergent, really. Not really.
Yeah.
They're quite similar writing style. And now the problem we have with Star Wars is they keep changing styles on the new stuff, and then they go back to the old stuff, and they're stuck now because the new stuff didn't work. So now they want to do prequels, but if they were to move forward, I'm not a prequel fan in general.
No. Oh.
No surprise to Ryan.
I think the only prequel fans are the ones that grew up with it, quite honestly.
Like I enjoyed the prequels, but in general, in any intellectual property, I don't want to see prequels. I want to see forwardness.
Absolutely, yeah. Going backwards is, I hate when stories go back and show us how things came to be. I don't mind a flashback now and then, but an entire show that's based, the whole premise of the show is that it came before this other thing that you know and love. I don't know. I feel like there's more opportunities for storytelling than that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Star Wars loves prequels. It's ridiculous.
I think one of the things that really caught me when I first watched Mandalorian Season 1 is that there was enough familiarity with the universe built in where you got the basic stuff. So you got stormtroopers, you saw like the carbon freezing, you saw, something similar to Yoda, bounty hunters, all that stuff. Thematically, the familiarity was there, but the way they portrayed it was like this new thing, this new character. His face was hidden, so there was an air of mystery. It had the technological advancements that Star Wars has always been about, prequels all the way up to I guess I don't really know what they really put in advancements with the sequels, but I don't really think that was the conversation. But the prequels and the older movies, the original trilogy, certainly had that element going for them. They always push things forward technologically, and to me, that's what that series felt like it was going to do is bring back. They had the samurai kind of theme, the Western theme that everyone's kind of familiar with Star Wars, but they gave you like this new story.
Yep.
And I thought that was kind of a promise of where we were going with this. And I was pretty excited about it because the one thing I think Star Wars does really well, or it could do really well, is just do new stuff. Is show me something new, show me new stuff. And whether or not that incorporates, the future of the Jedi or the Sith or whatever that is, you can bring those themes back, but show new characters, new stuff.
Yeah.
And it goes back, my main criticism of the prequels, and I remember watching when I was watching them, I remember seeing the trailer when it came out in whatever that was, I want to say 1998 or something like that, when they showed it and the whole world went nuts in that baby movie. Do you remember that?
Everyone went to the movie to go see the trailer, right?
It's like Baby Geniuses or something. It was like the number one at the box office, and the theater was empty as soon as the trailers played. It was just huge. But one of the things that bothered me about it was the familiarity aspect. Like, we watch this movie and there's R2-D2 and I'm like, okay, there's R2-D2. And then boom, when C-3PO shows up, well, what are the odds of that? And then, there's all of a sudden there's Jabba the Hutt and there's all the stuff we've seen before. And I was thinking to myself, I thought this was going to be all shit I've never seen before. I'm just watching the same. Like, why are these guys there? I was kind of hoping for, new stuff, and I don't know. It's kind of a missed opportunity, I think. Now, here's a question for you, Eric. Do you think they can get it back?
Yeah, I do. I think. Well, they could. Will they? I don't know. I don't think the trajectory is very good because everything that they've done to date ties back to the Skywalker saga in some way, shape, or form. And, the galaxy, to your point, Ryan, the galaxy is huge. It's billions and billions of people you could make stories about. But for some reason, every time they roll the cameras, it's about the Skywalkers or somebody they knew or somebody that they fought or something.
I think the problem is even deeper than that. I was thinking about it this morning. They tend to think in entire planets, not individuals. So, for instance, you have the desert planet where you have moisture farmers, and you have, the gambling planet, and you've got the politician planet of all things, and then you've got the goof planet, and that's where Jar Jar Binks is from. Like, everything is just by planet. They don't even break it down to individual people. They're so, Darth Vader was created on, the mining planet. What else do we got? Dagobah, the swamp planet.
Yeah.
They need to dig a little bit in their writing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a callback to, Lucas has always said the stories are meant for children, right? And so as grown men are discussing this, I'm gonna debate that a little bit, but I mean,
the ice planet. I forgot the ice planet.
You forgot Hoth, yeah. I mean, they definitely simplify things for the sake of simplicity, I guess, and I think that does bleed over probably into their stories.
Yeah, the Death Planet, which would be the star, the Death Star. Yeah.
That's no moon. But I guess, to answer your question, I think Andor to me felt like something new. Finally, it felt mature and grounded, and again, there's no Jedi or anything going on. There's no Force. It's just people trying to survive. They've announced a couple other projects, I think, for Disney Plus. One is Acolyte. I think it's about Sith guys, right? And then I think there's a Republic kind of project. I don't remember what that one's called. So maybe we'll finally get away from kind of the Skywalker black hole and start to see something new. I think they can't keep tapping this well forever. So I think inevitably the stories have to branch out. But if you look at what everything's coming, Ahsoka, she's tied in closely to the Skywalker saga. Her show's coming up next, I think, and we'll get a season 2 of Andor, which I'm excited about. But that's just a prequel to Rogue One, which is a prequel to A New Hope. So, round and around we go. It is frustrating because I feel like you were alluding to, Ryan, there's a lot of promise that you could tell all kinds of stories in the galaxy, but it seems like Lucasfilm or Disney, they feel like they can only tell one type.
I don't know if it's a symptom of a corporate kind of mentality where it was just kind of one guy's idea before, and now it's kind of based on. I have a feeling that it's business, and it's kind of about what is going to make us money and what's going to make the shareholders happy and stuff like that. And it kind of makes me sad a bit that seems like to be the only purpose for what they're doing is picking projects that they think are just going to be well received, as opposed to taking a chance and taking risks. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the thing that made Star Wars and a lot of the stuff that I think probably you talk about in your articles and we talk about on this show, pop culture wise, the special things are all things that people took a big risk on. And I think the public recognizes that, and they tend to gravitate towards those things in the end. So I'm hoping that maybe one day things are maybe going to have to get better before they get, worse before they get better.
Yeah.
And I just about crossed my streams there.
I think part of it is, if you think back to when George sold the rights to Disney and they announced all these plans and they were going to have spin-offs based on Yoda and Boba Fett and Han Solo, and so they did the Solo film that nobody wanted because you don't need
Although it had an amazing robot in it.
It was a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoyed it, other than the fact that Han Solo needs no introduction. I enjoyed the movie, and it was better than it had any right to be, but it did poorly, and I think that put the fear in Disney that they can't just slap Star Wars on something and it's going to make $1 billion. And I think that's probably why they've gotten a little more conservative with, we've got to follow the formula, right? The Star Wars formula. There's got to be stormtroopers, there's got to be Jedi, there's got to be some, cutesy stuff, and I think that's kind of, hopefully we're moving away from that now, but I think at least initially it seemed like that was the issue. And I think it ties back to what you were saying earlier, Ryan, about nostalgia. It's like, that's what I love The Force Awakens, and part of the reason I loved it is because it was so reminiscent of, after going through the dry years with the prequels, it was reminiscent of the things that the old movies had made me feel. So for right or wrong, nostalgia is a powerful drug.
When they originally built, or when they started on Star Wars, instead of starting on Episode 4, they should have started on 1. It's a novel concept. Like if he all along had all the story plot, like he had it written out in his head, right? The basic outline of the entire thing. And he could have started at the beginning.
No, I don't think that's true. But also,
well, he sort of had. He had quite a bit of it. I remember reading when I was in elementary school. I remember reading a little book about how Darth Vader burnt his lungs and stuff. Mm-hmm. Originally, right, and got the suit. And I remember, and I was probably in, like grade 6 or something. Okay. So that's well before the prequels.
Oh, sure, yeah, you're talking 80s, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, like maybe he didn't have it all fleshed in, but he still could have started the story a little, everybody needs backstory too, but then you leave it as backstory.
That's the issue. I think that's where he gets in trouble. Yeah, it's where he gets in trouble. He started the story at the right spot, but then he felt compelled to go into the backstory, and then the prequels. I mean, that's what the prequels are. They're 3-month movies of backstory, and they're not good.
Yeah. But without them, we wouldn't have Jar Jar Binks, though. So I guess
that is true. Have you guys seen? I don't know if you ever go on Reddit, but a couple years ago there was a post that was pretty popular talking about speculating that Jar Jar was actually secretly a Sith Lord.
Yeah,
and it broke down. Okay, you've seen it. Okay, yeah. It sounds ridiculous until you start reading the post, and he breaks down all these ways that Jar Jar, through action or clumsiness, affects the entire galaxy, and then you start to think, okay, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, there's some moments with him where he's goofing around, dragging a robot's leg or arm or whatever that's shooting everywhere, and
yeah, exactly.
Well, I got to tell you guys that my daughters grew up kind of in between the prequels. My oldest daughter was born when just, I think, right before episode 2 came out. And so by the time it was all done, she was still kind of like too young to remember any of it.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like, the movies that she's most familiar with would be the sequels. So we all went to see those in the theater before they were, my oldest daughter was a teenager when she saw that one. And my youngest one remembers it. But my kids do remember Jar Jar Binks, and they love him. They think he's fantastic. And you know what? There's like, when I tell them that, like, he got such a wild backlash that the actor, had some serious mental issues over the backlash of it. She's like, really? I thought he was great. He's like the funniest part of that whole movie. And she's like, oh, my friends think he's hilarious. Like, we're all laughing at this. They just think that this is the best character ever. And it kind of took me by surprise. And it kind of brought back to the point that you were talking about, is that Star Wars, he did mean it for kids. It's like a kind of kids entertainment. It was so well done, though, that I think it was something like what they hit on with Pixar movies, where the movies are so good and the stories are so good that anyone at any age could just find something that they love in it. And that really kind of caught me, what you said there. And that was the one thing that I did like Andor. I think it was the best Star Wars we've seen recently. But that was the thing I think that was missing from it, was that there wasn't really anything for kids in there. It was like, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. And
it's very adult, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that kind of surprised me, but it was a welcome kind of spot. There was a couple things that I really thought they cast the Imperials well, the high cheekbones,
yes,
the scowls,
absolutely.
And the intense eyes, everyone who was in the Imperial forces, you really felt like they really wanted you to be afraid of them, just the way they looked. That scene with Tim, have you seen the show?
Watched 2 episodes.
Oh,
been busy.
Yeah.
It gets probably episode 3 is where it gets good, and then it steadily ramps up. The first
I was
2
impressed with the first
slow.
2, and it's on the list.
Okay.
But when I'm over here working, I tend to not watch anything. I mostly just read. I don't know why. It's almost too much brain power to use after a 12-hour day to be watching stuff.
Yeah,
I think.
And it's not an easy watch. It is. To Ryan's point, it's definitely it's the most mature Star Wars we've ever seen. I mean, people talk about Revenge of the Sith is, I think, famously is I'm pretty sure it's still the only Star Wars movie that's PG-13, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true. I think Andor's darker than that. I mean, it's certainly more mature, but to your point, I think Star Wars is now big enough that we can have this show that's, kind of mature and meant for adults because it deals with adult themes. At the same time, you can have slapstick and other things that are meant for kids because we've grown up on the movies, and you've got like 3 or 4 generations of Star Wars fans, so you can't probably please everyone with the same thing. It's impossible at this point.
Well, it'd be a lot easier to please me if they just had plots that made sense. That's all they would have to do, and I'd be happy.
Listen,
it's not a big ask. It's not a big ask.
Well, you'll like Andor, Tim. There's a little bit of it's got some mature stuff in there that we haven't seen before. There's like a prison plot. There's a heist plot. Yes. There's some stone cold, like Han Solo style, I just shot you murders.
Yep.
Point blank. It's got some stuff in there that you haven't seen for a while. It's all kind of been in there the whole time, but you just haven't really thought about that stuff before. It was kind of clever.
Well, I'll bump it higher up the list then. It's probably before something else stacks on top.
It's a decent watch. Like, it is. I think if they're generating so many of these shows now, I think it kind of it'll fit its own way into other things. But I totally understand your point too, is like, his fate, and kind of what's going to happen with him, and it dulls the edge a bit, but
it does.
It was a welcome show. Okay. Now, Tim, being that Eric is a man about the pop culture, I have a couple more questions that I want to ask him. A real good one, but I want to let you have a chance to thread some stuff his way. before I
go ahead.
before I hit him with the big stuff. No. I demand that you have at least one.
Okay. Well, I remember reading somewhere, and maybe it was in that that email where you were looking for readers for your new Substack,
When I was
that
begging,
you
yes.
mentioned. Well, not really begging. It was a pretty easy ask there. You mentioned some big stuff in the works. Can you say anything about whatever this big stuff is?
It was. I'll be totally honest. It's more aspirational, and I have ideas. I don't have plans yet, if that makes sense. I think we talked about Medium a bit. I think Medium is a good place to practice your writing skills, but it's really hard to build anything of permanence on. And we run, like I said, I run Fanfare there, and it's a large publication. It does well, but I have the sense that it could be bigger or more. So last year I bought a domain for Fanfare, not knowing what I was going to do with it. I still don't 100% know what I'm going to do with it. There was a very popular gaming publication on Medium called Super Jump that I was a fan of and I wrote for, and they took their publication off Medium completely. They stood it up as an external website, invited all the writers to join them, and I came along. And I've just kind of been watching from the sidelines as they've been doing this. And I was telling Ryan, my background's in IT, so there's no reason technically I can't build my own thing. And I have the platform and I've got writers. So you just start to think, am I, by sticking with Medium, with the familiar, am I kind of holding us, I'm saying us, holding myself, but holding also anyone that writes for Fanfare back. But then, to take it offline, then you got to figure out how you're going to pay people and all this other stuff. I think there is another opportunity with the Substack because you can have, right now I'm the only writer on my Substack, but you can invite other writers to it. And there's a well-tread path for monetizing Substacks. And so, it occurs to me that, well, maybe rather than building a website and a whole, recreating the wheel, I just cherry pick some of my favorite writers on Fanfare and say, come join me at the Substack, and, we'll just do it that way. So all of that's to say, I don't have plans, I have ideas, and right now I'm just kind of trying to see what makes the most sense. In my mind, I'm almost viewing the Medium publication almost as like the JV squad, and I feel like there's an opportunity where I can pick people that are dependable and that I trust and have them join me on something bigger. But I honestly have no freaking clue what that might be because, like I said, there's challenges, and I think I've built up enough goodwill with people that I could ask them to just write stuff for me for free for a while. But that's not something that you want to be able to say. There's something at the end of the path that what is our goal, right? And so at this point,
even though they're writing for you for free right now,
well, that's the thing, they are, but Medium's paying them, so
sort of, yeah.
it works out. But yeah,
you get a peanut now and then. Yeah,
you get a couple reads maybe, and a cup of coffee out of it, depending on how good your month was. So it's a really good question. I wish I had an answer. Like I said, this is stuff I've been thinking about for probably half of a year, obviously since I bought the domain, which was sometime last year. I have the desire to do something bigger than what I'm doing now with it. I just don't know exactly what that's going to be. So, and honestly, part of the reason I was excited to come on the podcast is it makes a lot of sense to have Fanfare to have its own podcast, honestly, because it's, podcasting isn't going anywhere, and everything we talk about is topical and interesting, and so that's another avenue we could go. So I feel like there's lots of opportunities, and I only have so much time, so I have to figure out what's the best path, which is why I'm kind of just at this point just thinking. I'm doing a ton of reading about running newsletters and monetizing newsletters, just kind of, I don't know, letting the Force speak to me, I guess, to bring it back to Star Wars briefly. So I don't know if that's a satisfying answer, but that's the only one I have at this point.
Well, I think you're hitting on just about everything. I mean, I'm just sitting here going, man, this sounds like it's going to kind of take off for you here. The podcast one is definitely, it fits in so well with, I think, anything that you want to do. I mean, Tim and we started the podcast, this one here, and we kind of do it. It's a labor of love. We love it, eh, Tim?
Yep.
We're having a good time, and we're going to keep going until we have a good time. But it ties in and it moves from one thing to the next. So I don't know. I think you're really thinking in the right track. And I think, we were talking about the risk of Star Wars. I think that I don't want to talk you into anything or out of anything, but I think, anything cool requires a little bit of risk. I think you're going to do all right.
I appreciate it.
Fanfare is your prequel, right? So
Fanfare is my prequel.
On Medium.
Yeah.
On
exactly.
Medium is your prequel.
The Medium prequel, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd like to ask you is, I am I'm a huge pop culture nut myself. And on the early days of the internet, I was a big reader of Corona coming attractions. To a certain extent, like, the Ain't It Cool news and the scoop days of all the movie news and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then into slash film. And now I'm going to be probably devouring all the content on Fanfare like a rabid maniac. Kind of when you look back, I don't know how familiar you are with some of those sites, but when you look back at them, what kind of makes a successful movie or pop culture site in your mind?
That's a good question. I think you have to have a unique point of view, and this is applicable to pretty much anything you do, any writing really. I think you have to have a unique draw. People could go anywhere to get their pop culture fix, and there's certainly much more professional, highly paid outlets out there. Some of which I'm pitching to and stuff to get my name out there. But I think ultimately you have to figure out what your niche is, and you have to own it. So, Fanfare on Medium, I basically cover the gamut. We do film, we do TV, we do books, we do gaming, we do a little music. We even do some just kind of social commentary on stuff like celebrities and stuff, if it makes sense. But I'd say our bread and butter is really like film and TV with a smattering of gaming. Those are kind of the main things. I don't have any strong requirements or specific requirements around what people send me, other than that it has to be written really well. Like, I only let really good writers in because I'm trying to, this is going to sound like really pretentious, but like I'm trying to make Fanfare like the New Yorker level of pop culture, which it's not. But that's the kind of bar in my head, is like, I want people who write really well, so when people come to Fanfare and read something, they know it's going to be written well. And like I said, we cover the gamut. For my own stuff, which is the only thing I can really speak to, like I said, I try and inject humor into it because that's how I am in real life. My wife is having a serious conversation with me. I can guarantee you I'll insert at least 3 jokes during the conversation, because
we know how that'll end up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's just, I don't know. I'm just kind of a silly person in real life. I like to laugh, and I think about pop culture a lot. Like, I think about life through the lens of pop culture, probably more than is natural or normal. And so I just try and bring that into my writing. I try to give people something they're not going to see if they go to /film and read something that I write there, which is probably more of a listicle format, really. Or if they just go to Polygon or wherever they get their stuff, I try and make it, if they're reading my stuff, I try and give them a reason, because it's going to be something they're not going to see anywhere else. I don't know if that addresses your question or not, but
yeah, it does. Yeah. That's a great answer. I'm kind of curious. I got to read all your stuff. I probably am going to just. There was this TV show that I used to watch called Dream On. Do you remember? Have you ever watched that show?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Where they sit the guy down. He's a little baby in the 50s, and you watch him grow up in front of the TV, and all of his thoughts are like movie thoughts or TV thoughts. That's how my brain works.
Yeah, that's how my brain works. Absolutely. Yeah. And
so
it's fun.
It's great. Yeah, it is. Yeah, like what you said, like the pop culture jokes and the references, like every scenario that I've ever been in that's bizarre or happens to me is kind of like relatable back to a movie. And it kind of hit me what you said there, in describing trying to talk to your wife and having a joke in there, or 3 or 4 jokes that relate back to some pop culture thing in some way. It always makes me, that's how I was listening to a Kanye West interview, and besides the like crazy stuff, he brought up like a couple of movies here, and I was like totally like, I could see how he got to that thought, and it scared me, you know?
At the same time, you probably had the moment where your wife looks at you and says something like, "Enough with the nerd shit right now. We need."
Yeah. I don't even understand, or just like I don't understand the reference. I get that a lot. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
and then you have to explain it, and then it doesn't work out.
It ruins it.
Yeah.
The explanation always kills it. Yeah. That's probably one of my. I basically, when I write, I kind of try and write for the person who thinks like me, who, like, if I'm writing about Star Wars, they won't mind if I drop in a reference to, Indiana Jones or whatever, just because it makes sense or it's funny at the time. And it's the other fun thing about that is it's unexpected, because you don't really telegraph those things. They just kind of pop up, and then they're fun because they're surprising.
But it's authentic. Whereas if you're trying to write for a specific crowd that you're not part of, it's difficult. It's not it's not an easy sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't make any secret of the fact that I am a big dork. Like, I think on my Medium profile it says something like pop culture geek, nerd, something like that. Like, it's just, I wear my nerd badge proudly.
You gotta. It's fun. We've all earned it.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, some more than others. I mean, not all of us have made Stormtrooper armor, so I guess which Ryan has.
Oh, that's impressive. Are you in the 501st then?
I've got a Empire Strikes Back Vader, and my wife and I have 2 Stormtrooper suits, so we go out and do some events and charity. I try and stick to the charity based ones, but some of them are, I couldn't resist. We did backup dancing for Weird Al, and
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got on stage with him, and I just, I'm in my helmet the whole time, just thinking, wow, this is the greatest thing ever.
That is amazing. What a story.
So yeah, it's been kind of fun, kind of a fun trip, and I'm still building. I don't know if you could see behind me, but that's the next one I'm building up there.
Oh, is that the armor from Mando?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's cool.
So I'm working on that one. I've got it's my geek domain is kind of getting into that. And,
okay, that is cool.
Yeah, learned all kinds of new skills since COVID happened. Sewing machine and 3D printer, and now I'm doing some fun prop building work for my kids in their high school play. So I'm doing some props for that, and starting up a prop shop. It just happened all of a sudden.
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, so
that's cool.
Tim and I are trying to find a way. One day we've got a movie script that we're sitting on, so we're trying to find a way to spin this into that eventually. But we got a couple projects to tackle here before we get to that. So we know when you're talking about all these things, we're kind of in the same boat. You've got like this on the go, the website on the go. These are all kind of ideas that we've floated around too. And it seems like a lot, but I think after it gets done, you kind of take a deep breath back and go, wow, it seemed like a lot back then, but now it's nothing. And
yeah. I think any creative person probably has more ideas than they have time to do. And so you learn to pick out which ones are the ones that have legs, and which ones are just like, it seems like a good idea, but probably isn't, Well,
you need that junkyard of bad ideas to get to the good idea, I think. That's where people get stuck. They grab something and they're like, this is the only idea I am ever going to have. And it's not that good, but I'm going to make it go anyway. And then they struggle away. And, if you have 40 ideas and 39 of them don't work, oh, well, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the fun of having the ideas to start with.
Yeah. Yep.
So have you had any bad ideas that turned into good ideas?
I hope you're asking Tim. I'm batting 100. I'm batting 1,000. All my ideas are gold.
Are gold?
No. I think you always. I mean, I have a trunk of. I think everyone that's written fiction has their trunk of like abandoned stories that seem like great ideas, and then you stop working on them because you find out midway in it's not a good idea, or more likely you don't really know what you're doing, and you know part of the way you learn to write is by writing. And I have this idea that at some point I'm going to go back and revisit some of those stories because I think they're interesting, but at the same time there's always something I'd rather be doing, and so those just remain in the graveyard. But you can't.
Sometimes I think about Philip K. Dick and his writing style. And what he ended up doing was he'd come up with all these random ideas, and they wouldn't necessarily work out for an entire story. So we just jam 8 of them in one story.
Yep.
And because each one of them is good enough that they're interesting for a part of a chapter, but they're just not good enough to make a book out of. So
yeah. Yep.
And that was his approach. And I think like recently Ryan and I hashed out a whole time travel book in 15 minutes once. And then we did nothing with it. And maybe, I don't know, afterwards I was looking, I was like, I don't know if we could actually write this or not. But maybe
no, we
it
can.
could be it's a subplot, if nothing else. It's
we had that chat over text, and I thought I was driving to work the other day, and I thought, my God, I got to snapshot all those texts, or that's going to be gone.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah. We better both.
So you just reminded me of that because I'd forgotten about it again, and we did. There was like a whole brainstorming thread on there. Okay, so as a Tim and I are both kind of in the same business. We're writers too, and one of the things that you just mentioned here was that you get to a certain point in your story or in an idea that you have, and I'm experiencing this right now where I'm 2/3 of the way through something I've written. And I've kind of left it and come back a couple times, and I know how I want it to go, but I'm not really in there. Is there I'm not really in the headspace for the story, or I'm talking myself out of writing it. And I think sometimes that if I do get it out, it's going to be crap, but I might be able to polish it up a bit. Is there any sort of process that you use when you write something that kind of brightens that stage of it? Which I'm sure you've experienced.
Yeah. So I was stubbornly a pantser. So you're either a pantser or a plotter, right? And for most of my quote unquote career, I've been a pantser because I get excited about an idea and then I just start writing, and then you get halfway in, you're like, none of this makes sense. I don't even know if I like this idea anymore. I don't know that you can really effectively pants an entire novel. I mean, that's probably going to be somewhat controversial, and I know people like Stephen King do that. But then you could look at some of the ends of some of his novels, and you think maybe if you plotted like, just
what
a little
in the world,
yeah. So my approach now, I think you can easily pants something that's short, but if it's any novel length kind of thing, I think you at least need to have some kind of framework that says what the plot is or what things might happen along the way, and then at least you have something to aim toward when you get in that middle section and you get a little lost, because it does happen. Then you can kind of point back to, well, I was originally thinking I was going to do this, and my plots are skeletal at best, and it's more of a guideline. But if once I'm in the composition, most of the time I like veer off and do something different, because if you have kind of the spark of inspiration while you're in the moment, it's probably better than whatever you came up with while you were sitting there cold trying to just map out what this could be. So I guess, that's been my approach, is I try and have just like almost like a bullet point list of by chapter. Like, these are the things that might happen. This is super high level plot thing, but then maybe even just like character motivation or just things that occur to me and that might be interesting. But then once I'm actually in the act of writing it, I don't hold myself to it. But I find like having that document does help me to stay with a forward momentum, because it's easy to get mired down, right, when you're in that point where you start questioning everything and then you never finish it because you're just you don't know which way up is anymore.
Yeah,
it makes good sense.
Yeah, very.
It's kind of similar to, like, I haven't written as many longer things as you maybe, but fiction wise. But for an article now, all I do to start with is I come up with a headline that I think might work, and then a couple other spare headlines that might replace that one. And then I bullet point everything I've thought of so far in sort of an order. And then I just drop it for 2 or 3 days and I don't do anything. And then while I'm driving to work, I think, hey, wait, what about this? And I write that down on a sticky note or tell Siri to note it or whatever. And then I gather all that crap up and then take the time to actually start writing and then don't follow it.
Yeah,
Half the
sure.
time don't even follow it anyway, but
Yeah.
at least it's something to look at, right?
I think it's
And then when
I
you
think
get stuck, then you got something to look at.
it's a life preserver, right? It's there if you get in over your head and you need something to pull you out of the water. But most times I would rather just try and swim on my own. But it is nice to have something.
Well, it keeps the plot line. Like even in a shorter piece, if you don't know what your goal is, I find I wander off. The ending
Sure.
doesn't work.
Yeah. Yep.
Doesn't address the
Absolutely.
initial plot idea. Sometimes even
Yep.
get
Yep.
lost.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a novel I'm working on, and for the first time ever, everything I've ever finished. This is the first time I've heard of the pantser or the plotter, and I'm a pantser. And everything I've ever finished has always been by the seat of my pants. I just make it up as I go along,
Sure.
and it seems to work out.
Mm-hmm.
But with something mostly that's been screenplays, and to me, like a screenplay is a simple. It's a little bit more simple than a novel. It has to be in order to work properly, especially if it's a shorter one. For the longer one that I've got, it's funny. You kind of hit on the same process as me. Is like I've got the loose bullet points, and I've kind of figured out a way that I can write something where that kind of like by the seat of your pants thing can work and fit together. I don't know how good it's going to be in the end, and I'm not even anywhere near done. But it is like it does help you a bit. It's interesting to hear you say that because it gives me a little bit of hope that I'm on the right path here. So.
Yeah, honestly, if you just get the victory comes from getting to the end of the first draft because that's the hard work. And my favorite part is when I can start revising the thing because that's when it becomes fun. That's when I get to I don't know. I like revising, and it's a lot easier to work with something that's 70% there versus you're staring at the blank page and you're starting to question everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you've got nothing going on, it's that's where it's hard to get in your head. I was talking with another friend today who he's toying with writing, and he had the same thing where he sat down and he was like, I just sat down and I was gonna like, okay, I'm gonna write now, and he's like, I sat down and just nothing happened.
He probably went and emptied the dishwasher or something because that's what you do at that point. You start procrastinating.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? Like I said, it's gonna sound really dumb, but you just kind of have to fire something out there, even if it's just the stupidest thing you've ever thought in your life, because it might turn into something a little bit more, but you won't know until you get it down on there. Even if it's just a bunch of gibberish and a bunch of silly words or something like that, that might even give you enough time to get into it,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have not spoken to a bunch of other writers as you guys have. I don't know why, but I'm finding that this is really nice to talk to you, Eric.
Yeah, I love the talk shop. Honestly, in my data, I don't know anyone personally that writes. Like in my friend group, in my family, like I'm the only one that writes, so that I can't talk to anybody that I like that is in my life about writing in the same way that you can talk to another writer about it because no one else will get it. And so that was the value most of the value I got out of Medium was just the sense of kinship that, hey, these other people they're dealing with the same stuff I am. And it's a nice little community, just knowing, and like you were saying, just being able to talk shop a little bit and feeling and just getting advice from someone or just seeing how they're doing it and trying to apply it to what you're struggling with. Because we're all basically trying to reinvent the wheel every time you sit down. I mean, I've written several hundred pop culture articles now, but every time I sit down to do a new one, you're just reinventing the wheel every time. You're trying to do a little differently, bring something a little different to it, but you're always starting with the blank page.
I've thought to myself, basically, is this a one-trick pony? Am I doing the same thing every time? Is this different,
Am I
am I just
repeating
writing the
myself?
same thing over again?
Yes,
You get lost in
absolutely.
there.
You do. Yeah, and I've had the same thoughts. I think anytime you've done something enough, At least I do. That fear is there sometimes. Like, am I just repeating myself ad nauseum every time I talk about Star Wars? Is it the same article, just slightly different? So, yeah. But just, I think being aware of that is probably enough to make sure that you aren't repeating yourself, right?
Probably. And there is an evolution. I'm sure you've done the same thing as me and gone back to the beginning, article number 1 or 2, and then looked at them and thought, "Oh, that's rough." And then work your way up through time, and
yes, yeah,
you can see the growth, I guess, if you look at it that way.
Yeah, so, I mean, writing is it's something you practice. It's Ryan, you're talking about your friend who he thought he could just sit at his computer and he arrived, right, as a writer. And I don't know of any writer who just arrives like that. I think it's something like basketball or golf or anything. You only get good by doing it, by practicing. And yeah, I've heard a lot recently about people who recommend like taking a novel or something that you like, that you're familiar with, and writing it longhand as a practice, as a way to like internalize story structure and things like that. It sounds intriguing, and I could see maybe how it could work, but it also sounds like a lot of work, so I've never tried it.
Sounds like when I used to get in trouble in school and they'd make me write lines.
Oh, on the chalkboard? Absolutely.
Oh, no, they gave us a desk in the gymnasium, and we had to do them on a big, long sheet of paper. Okay. And then we got another one after that and another one after that. Yeah, I did a lot of them. My handwriting gets complimented all the time.
Yeah, we used to have to do sentences. I forgot about this, but yeah, when I was in like middle school, I mentioned I like to laugh, so anytime someone was doing something naughty in class, I was enjoying it, and then we would get punished, and the teacher would be like, "You have 500 sentences due tomorrow," and it would be like, "I will not disturb the class anymore." And so I'd go home that night and I'd start writing them out, and I probably would like pretend to go to bed and like have the flashlight trying to do it because I don't want mom to know, right, that I had, had sentences to get done.
I think I did sentences like that as well, but I had to do them at recess, lunchtime, before the bell rang, stuff like that. I remember doing that. Similar to that, and had so many I had to get done before the next day or something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
I did not fare so well. They knew I was walking distance, so I had to stay after. It was bad. But I don't know. I kept doing it. I don't know why. It's like the writing. I keep doing it.
You just stick with it.
I don't know why. I just got to do it. It's in me.
Yep.
Well, we've been talking here for quite a while, and I'm going to say it's a real pleasure to talk to you. I guess we'll wrap it up before we go.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I thought this is we don't have enough guests, and whenever we do, it's always a rich experience. And I think this has really been good for me to talk to you, and I think for Tim to talk to you too. I've been watching you, Tim, and you've been loving this.
Yeah, for those listening to the podcast, you won't be able to watch, but that's the way it goes.
This has been this has been a lot of fun. I'd love to come back sometime. It's just cool chatting with you guys about stuff.
Yeah, we'll have you anytime. So before we go, I just want to make sure that anyone who's listening is going to know where they're going to find your stuff, what your Substack is, your Medium page. Definitely, we mentioned some of the other stuff that you've done. So I'll give you the floor, and you can just tell us where to find all your stuff.
I'll keep it short and sweet. The easiest way is ericpierce.substack.com. That's the newsletter, and I link to everything else from there. And that was part of the genesis of it, because I had started writing. I started freelancing places, and like my mom or someone would be like, "I didn't know you wrote this." And so I started the Substack almost as a way to like just kind of tie everything together for the super fans, I guess, the half dozen or so people that love everything. So, so that's the easiest place to find me. And like I said, I linked everything there. So if you go there, you'll see everything I'm up to, and a lot of hijinks, because I'm a little less serious on Substack than I am anywhere else. So you'll get some fun articles out of it.
Awesome. And they can find Fanfare there also.
I link to anything I write on Fanfare. I link to there. But if you just go to medium.com and search for Fanfare, you'll find it pretty easily. It'll be the first result that comes up.
Well, this has been a great interview, and we wish you all the best.
Appreciate it.
We know you're going to do great stuff here.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was a good time.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for coming on. All right, guys. Well, it's been a slice.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks,
it's been
guys.
a slice.